All right, we're running Shadow of War on the Steam Deck OLED, and while this game is relatively old, it came out in 2017, it still looks really good, even by today's standards. So the fact that it can run on the Steam Deck and run well, as we'll see in a second, is truly impressive, at least to me. So we're gonna start out on all low settings at the native resolution of the Steam Deck OLED at 1280 by 800, and you can see our FPS, we're getting anywhere between 70 and 90 FPS, which I am really impressed with given how good the game looks. Especially on this smaller screen, the game looks really good. That being said though, on low, you can definitely tell the textures don't look very good and the draw distance isn't very good. So let's try bumping it up to the high preset at that native resolution again, and you can see we're getting between 40 and 50 FPS. Now for me personally, I would say for the Steam Deck OLED, this is my sweet spot. If you're getting 45 FPS, you can then double that for the 90 Hz refresh rate, and it's going to look really smooth and nice, and you also are getting a nice balance between the visual fidelity and the FPS. 45 FPS is going to look a lot better than 30 FPS. That being said, there are a few more settings you can tweak if you want to lock it at 45 FPS, which we're going to get into in the end of this video, which will be my recommendation for how I personally run it. But before we get to that, let's just see how could it run on Ultra with everything maxed out. And remember, yes, this is an older game, but it's still a AAA game. So if we put everything on Ultra, you can see we're getting between 23 is about the lowest FPS I saw, and 30 was the highest. So somewhere in the mid 20s on the FPS, and I would call that, it's playable, but it is not a fun experience anymore. That's getting pretty low on the frame rate. And also on a subjective note, I actually don't think Ultra looks that much better than high. I can't notice that much visual differences. So you're taking a huge frame rate hit, like half the frame rate, for not that noticeable of a visual improvement. So definitely I would not recommend using Ultra on the Steam Deck OLED. And now let's get into what I am playing at, what I've been playing at, which is my targeted settings, which you want to do the high preset. And this is targeting 45 FPS for the lock, which is half of the 90. So we can get it nice and smooth. And so we're going to do the high preset, but what we're going to do is set the resolution to slightly below the native resolution and do some upscaling. The resolution target we're going to choose is 1152 by 720 instead of 1280 by 800, and then that's going to be upscaled, and that tiny amount of upscaling gives just enough extra FPS that we can maintain almost always a locked 45. It does dip down to, I saw it get to 40 at the lowest, but generally it stays between 40 and 45, and that looks buttery smooth on this display, and you're still getting really good visual fidelity. And just a caveat for this, I was noticing while I played through this game, depending on where you are, if you're in a big castle or if you're out in the open world, I noticed the frame rate fluctuates wildly. If you go down into a cave, for example, you're gonna lock out the 90 FPS, but if you go up into a big fortress, you can see, or a big city, you can see the frame rate kind of tanks. So I made sure to do all my testing in kind of the worst case scenario, which was in a big fortress. That way you have a lot of enemies and a lot of buildings and a lot of things going on. So these are kind of the worst case scenarios for frame rate. And if you get out in other places, you will notice better frame rates than this. And I can also imagine as the game progresses and you get more and more complicated enemy types and probably more and more enemies on the screen, that frame rate is going to decrease. So as the frame rate decrease, maybe you could think about dropping it down to medium if you're later in the game and use the medium preset, still with that upscaling, maybe even lower the resolution so that you're upscaling more, and then you should still be able to maintain that 45 FPS lock. But yeah, I am really impressed with how well this game runs on the Steam Deck OLED. I should have mentioned, but it runs straight out of the box. You don't have to do any tinkering whatsoever. All the controls just work straight out of the box. And it looks really good. It plays well, it looks good, it doesn't destroy the Steam Deck's battery life. I am really impressed with how well this game runs on the Steam Deck OLED. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna let the gameplay play out so you can just see how it works and how the frame rate hitches happen and the texture load-ins and all that, and you can just see what the gameplay looks like. So I'm gonna let that run. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Your mission is to secure the Seeing Stone. It's blue, it's round, and it's ours. This is a powerful artifact, lads. Are you lost?
raiding party was trapped in the lower city overnight.
How many of you were there?
Not enough.
Heinous evil still stands.
We're about to lose. Gate.
Then let's cut a path up there.
Sergeant Terrador's going to need our help. Let's move.
We'll never take this city. This is just like Shinnok's vision.
If Sauron's forces get the Palantir, all of Middle-earth will share the same fate.